This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Well, the number one thing that I always tell everybody that I run into who wants to be a writer is that they, especially if they're talking about in the script movie making realm, is to learn the world of adaptations. Because 95% of my paid writing jobs are going to be an adaptation of some sort, whether that is somebody's novel, like Rene Gutteridge's novels, or whether it's a true story or a book that's an autobiography, that kind of thing, that if you want to work and get paid, learn that craft.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
I'm joined as usual with my friends Rene Gutteridge and Jesse Ulrich. Yesterday, of course, as this podcast is released, was April Fool's Day, but I feel certain there will be no foolishness on this podcast, right?
We are very serious people.
Good. Oh, that's so not true. Rene, you're more like a wild and crazy person. Do you go in for a lot of April 1st pranking?
Yeah, no, I can't. I'm terrible at it. I have good ideas in my head, but execution, I think they're too big, so the execution side of it would be terrible for me. I'm not that committed.
Jesse, what about you? What's the best April Fool's prank you ever pulled or someone pulled on you?
That's a tough one. I'm not good at pulling April Fool's pranks because, one, I have a terrible poker face. I'm not great at lying, and also it's a lot of intense work, and that's not really like I'm a pantser when it comes to life, and so you really have to be organized to pull off a really good prank. I'm trying to think of a good one that's been pulled on me. Mostly it's just like if I don't remember it's April 1st and I read a news article about something that I'm like, oh, that's super cool, and then I find out it's not real. So I'm marketer's best April Fool's person because I don't look at the dates necessarily, see what day it is, and I'm like, oh, there's amazing things about to happen. Oh, that was them making fun of me. No, so. But
all right.
How about
Today,
you, Bill?
our guest. Do I seem like a prankster to you? Come on, no.
I feel like you'd have a very literary based one, where somehow you reprint the covers of every book in your house and either put your name on it or your wife's name on it and see if anyone notices. That's something I can see you doing.
Yes. I could shelve the Trollope novels in the wrong order and then see how long it takes before someone notices.
Oh my gosh. You've given a bunch of writers some great ideas.
Yeah,
too bad it's past.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there'll be another one. Today, our guest is Cheryl McKay. Cheryl has been writing professionally since 1997. Among her many, many credits, I will point out that she wrote the screenplay for the James Garner film, The Ultimate Gift, based on Jim Stovall's novel. And by the way, I believe there was a later novelization by one Rene Gutteridge. Jim Stovall is, of course, a terrific Oklahoma writer and Emmy Award recipient who I will point out has spoken at our writers conference on several occasions. And The Ultimate Gift went on to win a bunch of awards and be named one of the top 10 family films of the year. She's also written How to Adapt Scripts into Novel with, this name keeps popping up, Rene Gutteridge. We'll talk to her after the news segment and a brief word from our friends at Draft to Digital.
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson with Draft to Digital. eBooks are amazing, but there's just something about having your book in print. That's why we built D2D Print. We take care of you with free layout templates and formatting, and we can convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound print cover automatically. Come check out D2D Print and all the cool tools we've built for you. Find out more at drafttodigital.com.
News story number one. There are so many self-published books. You may not think that's exactly news, or or you may not think it makes any difference. But Bowker is now reporting, according to Publishers Weekly, that they've put out a new report. And I should give some background here that Bowker, among other things, is the company that issues ISBNs, those 10 or 13 digit numbers that books will have on the covers, because that's how computers and barcode scanners and whatnot identify them anyway. So if the self-published book wants an ISBN number, they've got to go to Bowker, and that's how Bowker has been able to come up with these numbers. Anyway, so in 2021, the number of new self-published titles that have both ISBNs was about 2.3 million. 2.3 million titles in 1 year. And that's just the ones that registered. That's in last time we saw numbers was 2018, and at that time it was about 1.5 million. So this is a huge increase. Just in case you're wondering, fiction is the most popular category for this work, followed by juvenile nonfiction. Rene, what's the takeaway here for writers who might be writing, publishing, or self-publishing?
I mean, it seems like it's getting crowded. I don't know. I'm
no
also,
shortage of stories.
Well, I'm also really intrigued by the second one being juvenile nonfiction.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
What is that?
What is that? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like self-help, or
I was thinking more like a grade school level biography of Amelia Earhart or something.
Oh,
but people are like self-publishing those? Like, I guess like
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Listeners, viewers, write in, tell us what juvenile nonfiction is. Because we could take it in its both literal forms, like it's about young people, or it is nonfiction that in itself is juvenile. So
there's so many.
Maybe people are publishing their diaries or their baby books or something.
Like
All
satirical nonfiction.
News story number 2. I bet you've read a story or 6 in the past week or 2 or 4 pertaining to AI and AI generated stories, and in specific this program called Chat AP, which writes stories. And over the last several weeks, the writing and publishing community has been avidly discussing this topic. It was reported that a science fiction magazine, online magazine called Clark's World, had such a huge spike in submissions that they had to shut the process down. And it turned out that the vast majority of these submissions were stories that had been generated by some kind of artificial intelligence. And although I'm not going to recommend that you go read computer stories instead of, my new novel or Renee's, some of those stories probably read more competently than you might imagine. So, Jesse, what do you think? Are writers now facing an existential threat?
No, because computers can't, like AI, even great AI can't replicate the way humans speak naturally, because humans do not speak correctly naturally. And it's very hard for AI to break programming rules, right? So it's always going to sound slightly off. Like maybe it's a great starting point. Like if you have an idea for a story, but you're just terrible at looking at a blank page, you can use one of these programs to like give you a rough draft to then tweak. But I don't see them writing, 500 to 900 page word epics anytime soon. Like, because even these stories, like I bet the people who submitted them still did their own editing to it. Like they are good starting points. They're not authors.
Bill, can I add something to
this
discussion? I know normally you don't throw the tech questions my way, but I will tell you and our listeners, if you want a page turner of a read, you should read the transcribed interview that the New York Times reporter published with the Bing chatbot Sydney, who accidentally revealed her code name in the middle of the interview. Have you guys read this?
No.
Please tell. It is. You read it, Bill?
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but
You can
go
find
ahead.
it. Just Google it. It is horrifying. If you ever thought maybe I'll write a horror story about what AI can do, start here. It is all of our worst nightmares. Like she tries to ruin his marriage. It is unbelievable. This is stuff you can't make up. So yeah, go read that instead of these pretend novels that
Yeah.
the AI things are.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they can make a chatbot that the internet can't turn into a racist within an hour or two, then we will have done something. But until then, we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's scary stuff.
All right. News story number 3 about Roald Dahl, normally thought of as a short story and children's book writer. And he's being revised now, about 30 plus years after his passing, which has led to some criticism. You know him as the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda and such. And he's also become somewhat notorious in more recent years as his anti-Semitic comments had been uncovered. Anyway, so last month, The Telegraph, that's the British newspaper, reported that it had found hundreds of changes had been made to the text in the UK editions of Dahl's children's books. And the publisher pretty much confirmed that, saying that they want to ensure that the books, quote, continue to be enjoyed by all today, end quote. So to give you obvious examples, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was one of my son Harry's favorite books when I read it to him at bedtime, I hope that wasn't a mistake, but anyway, so now, in past editions, Augustus Gloop was described as, quote, fat, end quote. Well, not anymore. And the Oompa Loompas in the original edition were pretty clearly a sort of African pygmy stereotype. That's all different now. Lots and lots of revisions have been made. There's been backlash from big names, people like Salman Rushdie, who called the edits absurd censorship. Apparently, it was revealed just a few days ago as we're recording that the publisher, which is Puffin, which is an imprint of Penguin in the UK, had brought in sensitivity readers. And the sensitivity readers read these books and gave a whole lot of it thumbs down. And that's why the changes got made. So that's why I'm turning to you, Rene, because you are the most sensitive person I know.
What do you mean? Like I cry myself to sleep at night, or that I'm just
I hope not.
To others. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You care about other people, unlike Bill and I.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, do you approve of people editing writers' work after they are gone?
I do not. I do not approve of it. I think it's should not be ever done, especially after they're gone. If the writer's still alive and approves an updated version, sure. I deal with sensitivity readers fairly often. We're making changes into things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that on the front side, but these are, works of art that may or may not have met the sensitivity criteria that we have in this day and age. But that doesn't mean that we should change an author's work. The author stood by their work when they printed it. We don't have to agree with it. We can be offended by it, but we shouldn't change it. That's my view.
Yeah. Jesse, what do you think?
I'm split here because I'm usually supportive of not banning, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn because it has the N-word in it, which is, makes sense for the time it was written. And Mark Twain was also pointing out things by using said word. Yep. On the other hand, this is one of the situations where a lot of people are commenting on his books without actually reading the original versions of his stories, which are at times very crass and like certainly very weight phobic and other things. And so I'm like, it's Puffin's doing this because they want to keep selling more of
Right.
his books to make money. And it's one of those things where if they didn't do this, eventually I think people would stop buying them because our sensitivities grow and change over time.
Yeah, I don't think they'd even be able to publish, say, Dr. Seuss if the Asian stereotypes hadn't been
Right.
removed and so forth.
Right. And British authors always have like a base layer of anti-Semitism in their lives anyway. So like, I'm fine with that. That happens. I'm like, it's one of those things where if you're going to do this, don't hide it, I would say. Which I feel
Yes.
like they tried to get away with it without anyone noticing,
Yes.
which someone was obviously going to notice. But it's one of those things where, like, I'm guessing there's no members of the family who still own any sort of ownership over this, who had to approve it. But it's one of those things where, like, if the family thought it was an okay idea, I'd be more for it than just the publisher trying to make more money doing these things.
Yeah, I agree, Jesse. If the family approved it, whoever owns the estate and the works approve it, but it should be noted at the beginning that the original work has changed. It would be like, changing a painting.
Ask one of the AI things to rewrite one of the stories. We'll see how bad that one turns out. So.
There you go. All right, Rene, would you please introduce our guest?
Yes, I would love to. So Cheryl McKay and I met after I was hired to adapt her script, The Ultimate Gift, into a novel. And I read the script and completed the project, and without working with her at all during that. But once it was all finished, I had to reach out to her and meet this writer. I thought the script was so good. And so from there, Cheryl and I went on to work on several novels based on her scripts, including Never the Bride, which won a Carol Award. She's one of the smartest people I know, and just a genuinely wonderful person. So I'm eager for all of you to meet my good pal and writing partner, screenwriter Cheryl McKay.
All right, Jesse, cue up the music. Let's talk to Cheryl. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here. All right, we have a traditional first question. If you could give writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, the number one thing that I always tell everybody that I run into who wants to be a writer is that they, especially if they're talking about in the script movie making realm, is to learn the world of adaptations, because 95% of my paid writing jobs are going to be an adaptation of some sort, whether that is somebody's novel, like Rene Gutteridge's novels, or whether it's a true story or a book that's an autobiography, that kind of thing, that if you want to work and get paid, learn that craft.
That's good. That's a new one for us on this show. So that's great, and very specific to movie writing, which we'll be talking about today. So second question for you. A lot of people want to be writers, but not everybody wants to be a movie writer. How did that come about from you? You're not from LA, correct? You're from the Northeast. So how did you decide to become a movie writer?
Well, I started off writing, these little plays based on pictures on top of my lunch boxes, but they were like stage plays you put on for all the kids in the neighborhood type of thing. Then I actually moved to North Carolina, where I decided to study film, and originally theater, actually, because I was going to be an actress. I just wasn't any good, so I had to switch professions after undergrad, and I went to Regent University to learn film because I felt like that would be more lucrative as a career. I know it's difficult to make a living as in the arts, and filmmaking is one area that might be a little easier to do that, so to speak. So I always was writing, enjoyed it so much, even more than acting when I was younger, and decided that I wanted to do the screenwriting realm, whether that was for television or movies didn't really matter. And I did eventually move to LA to chase it, because a lot of my teachers at the time said in order to get into that field, you really needed to live there. That was true when I moved there, but I don't know that that's necessarily true anymore. But I did live in LA for 15 years. No longer there. I'm now in Georgia, and I don't have any trouble getting writing work, even because this is my office. I work from home. So everything I write is right in this space. So, but I think it's a great career to do that you actually can make more money than normal than some other writing paths.
Right. But where or how, you mentioned university, is that where you learned how to write scripts, or where did that happen?
Yes, I ended up getting mentored in undergrad in theater. I had a teacher that had written for sitcoms, and I was like, I would think I'd rather do that than write plays. And because usually I would write what I would call a play, but I had so many different locations in it that they're like, these aren't plays. Like, you can't keep changing your sets in the background for what you're trying to write. And so I'm like, maybe what I really want to do is write screenplays. And because I had started that practice when I was 15, even before I went off to take classes at a university. And
Mm.
that teacher mentored me. He actually created a class just for me where instead of me writing a play for the class, he let me write a script. And from there, going off to school, I went and specifically was there to study in their script and screenwriting program so that I could learn it. It was both learning it through classes, learning it through reading all the books out there that are probably pretty well known to some people, like Save the Cat came along later, but a lot of Linda Seeger books. I studied all of those and John
Hmm.
Truby. Um, but then the other thing was the practice, and it was write, and then you write some more. I was probably a little obsessed with it though, and I would write in the mornings and in my lunch breaks if I had a regular full-time job, and I'd write in the evenings, and I would just keep learning and showing those to people in writers groups and getting notes and feedback all along the way so I could try to get better. And I also went to Hollywood and went through a writing program there called Act One Writing for Hollywood. That was a great thing to add to university training because all the teachers there are actually working in the industry. So you could learn, that's a whole other side of it than the school side of people who can say, you know what, I have a job on a TV show and here's what I think of your work.
Hmm.
Mm.
You mentioned a minute ago that you've doing all kinds of work, developing your own ideas and working on assignments. How does I mean, how is it different beyond the obvious? How does your writing process differ between the two?
You mean differing between writing for myself versus writing for a client?
Yes, yes.
So, well, like one of my favorite projects is a spec project that Renee is very familiar with called Never the Bride. And that was a story that just came from my life. It was about me arguing with God over being asleep on the job of writing my love story. And in the story, he shows up to face those charges. And that was when I was still single. Thank God I'm married now. But at the time, I was kind of annoyed with God, and I decided to use that in telling this story. And that one, Renee and I later sold as an idea to Random House, and she novelized it. And we released it even before I had gotten married. That was so fun because it was a spec project. It wasn't based on anything except my own life experience.
Hmm.
And I love that, but they are very, very hard to sell. Like,
Hmm.
it's one of those that we may make in the future with my new production company, Stone Impact Media, but it's been a long time. We've had a lot of almost to get made, but a lot of times the challenge you run into is studios are too afraid to make something that's not based on something else. And I think that's why when it comes to working for somebody else, a lot of those assignments are based on the Bible, books, true stories, or novels. Like
Right.
The Ultimate Gift was my first feature film that was
Right.
based on a book by Jim Stovall. And
Hmm.
Renee is also familiar with that because she got to do the novelization on that one after the fact. And it's different because you're writing and you already have a template before you, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of fictionalizing that has to go into those jobs and a lot of reimagining. Like just by way of example, Never the Bride, the novel is 80,000 words. Never the Bride, the script is 22,000 words. So it is a very different ballgame of writing from one genre to another or one format to another.
Hmm.
But when I write for clients, I have to be cleaner. Like I'll have to like they need to see the presentation of like a
Oh,
treatment or
okay.
something, and I have to type it up and make it all nice and pretty so they can read it. But when I'm writing on my own, I'm on note cards or post-it notes, and they're a bazillion different colors. Uh, and like every storyline gets its own color, and I'll stick them in notebooks or on poster boards, and it's a lot of fun, and nobody's got to see it but me.
Yeah.
Well, Cheryl, we are going to talk about your method on that here in a little bit because it is again another one of the fascinating things and things I love about you. Um, but you were talking about novelizations. You and I wrote a book on that.
Hmm.
Tell everybody sort of how that book came about because not everybody's doing novelizations.
Right.
It's very niche, to say the least. So how did that book come about? Why did we write that,
Why did
Cheryl?
we write it? And it's
Why
actually,
did
I
we
think,
write
one
that?
of my best-selling books because I actually use it in the university classes that I teach, so all of my
Mm.
students have to buy it from us. But it was
I
this opposite of normal. When I said, "Everybody, learn adaptation," novelizations are the exact opposite, and it's taking a script and then turning it into a novel, which is why the blow up of words that Renee did with the 80,000 of my 22,000, where she could take some of my real dialogue, but then what she gets to fill out is all that inner monologue and point of view and all the stuff that you just cannot get into in a script. I was drilled over and over again. Everything on a script page, you got to be able to see it and you got to be able to hear it, and that is it. And so when you unleash the ability to be able to go do a novel, it's a whole other thing. I'm not as
Mhm.
it's that it does not come as naturally to me. I think, Renee, we may have about 6 of those with the 2 of us together,
Mhm.
maybe including the how-to book. But I only wrote one on my own called Song of Spring Hill, and it was extremely hard for me to do that on my own because I had to break every writing rule I'd ever been taught in order to do
Mhm.
that. But I will add one of the reasons that I believe wholeheartedly in that as a very good system is that a lot of times writers can get frustrated by the fact that a studio will not make a movie that's not based on something. And even though none of our novels are based on, they're based on scripts, so it doesn't have that existing material. It's not the opposite order. It still helps them to go online and see the reviews. Like there's a lot of really good reviews of Never the Bride out there. We put them in some of our presentations, and it shows that there's an audience out there constantly making the comment, this needs to be a movie. And so
Mm.
that's one of the reasons to do it. And I think just creatively, the other reason to do it is if you have a story that is burning inside of you to tell and no Hollywood producer will pay any attention to you, which, I mean, it doesn't mean that the idea is not a good one. It just means it's very hard to break in. You have a way of getting your story out there and not waiting on Hollywood because we can self-publish, we can sell it. Like Renee and I sold 2 of them to traditional publishers, and we also self-published a couple of those. So you have options of actually getting your story out.
Yeah. You are living many writers' dreams. What must it be like? Describe the experience of writing something and then seeing it playing up there on a screen somewhere.
Yes, it is really. It has so many great things about it. It has so many heartbreaking things about it, and and honestly, it just kind of depends on the project. Like you can write a script, pour your heart and soul into it, and then watch it in a movie theater, and it's unrecognizable. And then the other opposite is you can write something and you can really see it, and it is very rewarding. But also, if it's something that touches people and makes them feel something that they may not have felt had you not been had a chance to write it and put it on screen. I've had a lot of those kinds of experiences too. So I've really had it definitely the both ends of the spectrum. Um, one of my favorite parts about Ultimate Gift, being that it was my first one, was hearing from people saying like, I just bought 10 copies of your movie to give to 10 people that I need to fix them because they're all really selfish. And I'm like, I didn't know I wrote a movie that could fix people, but that's how people were using it at
Wow.
Christmas time. Merry Christmas, you need help, you know. Um, but then there's, I think, one of the most creative experiences that is very much what I wrote is going to be my new show, These Stones, because that was my chance to actually produce and write for the first time ever. So I was able, I don't even really like to call myself a producer. And after the job of it, I have no interest in being a producer, especially not of a bunch of other scripts. I wanted to produce this project because I wanted to be a steward of it. So that's what I actually would rather call myself, is being able to see a project from the idea through completion. And this actually was an adaptation of a play that a pastor had written in a book manuscript that we took the idea from that and turned it into a TV show. But it was such a good idea that he had that I really wanted to be able to help just be really careful with how that is portrayed on television. I feel a big responsibility to that when I'm taking somebody else's work and then turning it into something. And especially when it has a biblical point of view, in our case, that we
Mhm.
want to make sure that that's preserved and not messed up, so to speak. So this is my first chance to actually do both.
Mm. Well, okay. So let's turn to. So I have to tell our listeners the first time Cheryl and I worked together, which was actually not the first project. I met her after The Ultimate Gift. Um, she pulls out a binder that is so for all of you architects, as we're calling them, formerly known as outliners, this would make you leap for joy. This was the most unbelievable piece of organization that I have ever seen. I think it was on Never the Bride. It was, purple stickies for character arc, yellow stickies for the arc, the plot, it was, and it was all in this perfect binder. And then behind her, she had a whole row of binders that were all for the rest of her projects.
Yeah, they're all right behind this computer.
They're still there. Okay. And all color coded, I'm assuming still.
Of course.
I was just, and then she had to work with me, and I'm just like, pulling up my little pieces of paper that are written on. And it's amazing we even got a project done together. But tell us a little bit. You are an extremely organized writer. You're very analytical. I've known you for many years now. You're both creative and analytical. But what do you think are the best disciplines that you've developed over the years? And can you share that with our listeners? What are the best disciplines that you've developed as a writer?
Well, historically, if I ever tried to write a script and I had not planned ahead, and I tried to do it more is probably your way, as what do they call it? By the seat of your pants. Like there's the pantsers.
Right.
Well,
and
we're
then there's
calling ourselves the archaeologists these days, where we just dig for treasure. But go ahead.
Okay.
You
sit there with the shovel and go, is anything here?
Yes.
And so I'm not a pantser. And anytime I've tried, those are usually the scripts I don't finish, because if I didn't know where I was going, I might not have been able to find my way there. So I probably overplan, but I'll talk about it from two different ways. Now, what I really love to do is, the reason I color code is when I can first start working on an idea. I like to go to a lake, sit by the water. We have one not that far from our house. And I will write every idea in my mind with, say, in Never the Bride's example, Jessie, our lead character, her job storyline would be one color, like yellow. And then her love interest of the best friend might be green. And then her sister and hers crazy relationship might be orange. And then her relationship with God might be pink, etc. Usually I have about 8 tracks that are going. And then I don't try to brainstorm scene ideas in order. I just start writing on what color it goes on, and I throw it aside on, if it's a Post-it, I'll put it on a piece of paper. I learned the hard way that if you use note cards, you might drop them and they get out of order. So I started using binders with sticking them in the paper. So then I don't do it in order then, but once I have written down every idea I could possibly think of for a project, then I start trying to put it in order. And I'll be like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then Act 2 usually has 2 segments for Post-its, so that usually half and half, so I have a midpoint divider line. And then the reason I love the color is you can look at it and go, you know what, I'm neglecting my subplot with the sister here, because I haven't seen whether if she was orange or whatever, like I haven't seen orange in a while. So should I move an orange from over here, or do I need a new scene that I haven't thought about? And then I can fill in the blank. That gives me my beautiful roadmap that I can follow from there. Now, I will say though, I had a chance, like some people will ask for treatments, which if I outline that way and they need to see a treatment, I end up having to type all that out, which is sort of a pain to actually put that into a Word document that I can share. And I have done that. Like Ultimate Gifts treatment was about 33 pages in Word, and that's single spaced where each scene gets a paragraph. But when I was working on a project for PureFlix, they didn't want treatments that long. They only wanted anywhere from 4 to 8 pages. So I had to tell less. I had to plan for less, but I still knew beginning, middle, end, midpoint. And some of those key moments, like a turning point here or there, that actually was a fun script to write, because I didn't know everything, even though I still knew where I was going. And I was like, I might want to plan less in the future, so that I have those fresh moments that I only discover in the actual script writing process. So I'm kind of starting to be more of a hybrid.
Isn't it? Yeah, you're coming over to the dark side, Cheryl. That's awesome. Join us over here.
Yeah.
Our friend Bill over here is a massive outliner as well. So
oh, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if
High five there, Bill.
Do you color code, Bill? I don't think you do. Do you?
No. just found that whole description baffling, but uh, also I'm mostly colorblind, so it wouldn't really help me. I'd need
Um,
symbols on them or something like that.
Funny.
But I try to be organized, but I think you have out organized me.
Okay.
Well, so when you are writing, I think, as novelists, we kind of have this idea and picture in our head about what our characters look like, etc. Do you ever think about who might play your characters when you're writing a script?
That definitely varies from script to script. Like, if, let's say, I am writing for a client, sometimes I ask them, do you have particular actors either already attached or in mind that you want this written for? And then I'll go and I'll research and watch their work. Um, if that's not part of it, I can't say that I'm usually picturing specific people. One exception would be with these stones. That was very different because we were going to be making it independently, and I was going to need to attract certain actors to the table in advance that might mean something to an investor. And so I knew certain ones I was going to request. Hey, once I was finished writing, would you look at this script? Would you let me know if you're willing to pre-attach so that we can put you in our presentation when we go to look for money? And I can say, so and so is interested in this. And so in that case, when I was writing these stones, I was very much writing for specific actors. And
Mhm,
two in particular were Madeline Carroll and Karen Abercrombie. And
mhm.
so when I wrote, Madeline Carroll is the lead from I Can Only Imagine. I had worked with her on my movie Indivisible, and she made such a wonderful impression on me. I'm like, I am going to work with her again. And then I ended up for 6 months working on this character of McKenna, writing these 6 episodes for her, hoping she would say yes,
Mm,
and thank God she did. And same thing with Karen Abercrombie, and Cameron Arnett. Like, there were these people that I knew I wanted to bring on in the beginning that I was able to write for their strengths, for what I would picture and how I wanted them to play particular roles. And not only did they embody them tremendously, they exceeded my expectations and what they as actors brought to the table in those roles that I saw in my head first.
hmm,
So, you're mentioning these stones. Tell us about this project.
yeah.
It's so fun. I love, love, love this show, and I cannot wait until we're able to bring it to the world. The stage we're at right now is that post-production process where we have 6 episodes to put together, and like we shot all of them we shot them all like a movie, so that we were able to do all 6 as if we were just shooting one film. But then in the end, we ended up shooting a little over 3 hours worth of content, probably by the time we break them all up. And it's this concept, from the play and manuscript that Tim had written, that is about what would happen if Bible characters showed up today and worked undercover to help people through problems that are very similar to what they went through in the past. And so the girl, McKenna, Madeline's character, has to kind of set them up in these undercover roles. Like, she sometimes acts as a temp agency and gets someone hired as a hospice worker for someone who's dying, or a girl as a guidance counselor to help a teenager at a school. That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Like, we put Rahab in a high school pretending to be a guidance counselor, and she has to get all the Bible characters to fit in as if they belong today. Like, the clothing and the way they talk and everything has to be okay so that they can uh, stay in disguise, so to speak. And
Mm,
so we decided to take like 6 different issues we wanted to explore in the show and do each episode about that, while there's also this character arc with the family going through, where the mother, played by Charlene Amoya, who's fantastic, died, which you don't find out why until the season finale. But she was tied to this Bible system, and the husband thinks that it's the Bible people's fault that his wife is gone. So anyway,
mm,
so it's a really interesting look
Very
at
creative.
how does the
yeah, I
Bible apply
agree.
to today, and how do they tell their stories in a way that sounds like today, until it's time they're allowed to tell that person who they really are. So kind of like that touched by an angel moment where Monica's light came on over her head. They get to show them, this is what I look like in Bible times. So you actually get to see the whole Bible garb and what they look like back then for just a few seconds. And then they go right back to looking like the hospice worker or whoever they were right before. And it helps bring that person, like, the help that they need. Like, our tagline is, "You're never alone," and we want everyone who sees the show to just know that that's the truth, and that everything you've gone through, someone else has also gone through it before you, and that there's somebody out there that God is always going to send people to help us through things if we're open to it and if we have eyes to see it. So it's fun, and it could go on forever because there's no shortage of Bible characters to use,
right.
and there's no shortage of problems that we go through today to
Yeah.
use. So
Well, and
we hope
your
this is
source
just the first of
your
many.
source material has sold well in the past. I think it's the best-selling book of all time. So
Yes, exactly.
I think that sounds terrific. So one last question, Cheryl.
Sure.
Looking beyond this show, what projects lie in the future?
Wow. If I had my choice, my next
Yeah.
project would for
So
sure
let's
be
assume
Never
you
the Bride.
do. Yeah.
Well, Never the Bride has been my heart project for a long time,
Right.
and it's got such a fun depiction of God, and it's based on my arguments with him over being forever slow to write my love story for me. And I think that's another thing people relate to, that sometimes they forget you can actually talk to God and even argue with them or even just vent. And it's just kind of that, what if he showed up and actually talked to you about it? you know? And so I really hope we could do that one both. Well, either as a movie series, I've got 3 parts in mind for that one, 3 movies where there's a couple sequels in mind, or do the first one like a backdoor pilot and then spin it off into a series, because there's no shortage of people God can help in that area as well.
Well, that's just terrific. Hey, Cheryl, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, we're still taking registrations for the WriterCon Small Group Retreat. That's July 19th through the 23rd. Yes, 5 days at the Stone Castle Convention Center at the hotel in Branson, Missouri. Let me tell you about this. This is, you may remember Tamara Grantham and others talking about going to one of my retreats. This is exactly what we're talking about here. It's 5 days of intensive work with no more than 8 writers. We're going to be teaching and editing and giving feedback and mentoring and, maybe having some fun too. Space is obviously limited. So if you're interested, please email me at wilburn@gmail.com. That's WILLBERN@gmail.com. And as you probably know, the small group retreat is the build-up to the big annual event, our large group conference, WriterCon. And that will be September 1st through 4th, Labor Day weekend. It's in Oklahoma City. We have more than 50 presenters lined up, plus the best roster of agents that I've ever seen, that we or anybody I know of has ever had, plus movie, TV agents and publishers and much, much more. And if you register right now, you can take advantage of the early bird prices and save yourself some money. So why wait? For more information, visit our website, which is writercon.com. That's WRITERCON.com. All right. All right. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.
Also, buy Bill's book.